Imagine this. One spin, one card, one roll of the dice, and your entire life changes. Some people win fortunes, others lose everything. But what if I told you the real gamble isn't in the casino? It's out here in the real world. Stick around, because what you're about to hear will blow your mind. Stop right there. The harsh voice of Officer Miller cut through the quiet morning air of Greenfield Park. It was a sunny Saturday. Families were enjoying picnics. Children were running around and joggers were passing by. Among them was Marcus Johnson, a tall black man in his mid-30s who was simply sitting on a bench, enjoying a cup of coffee and reading a book. But to Officer Miller, who had a reputation in the neighborhood for being quick to judge, Marcus didn't look like just another man relaxing in the park. Instead, Miller saw him as suspicious. "Hey, you!" Miller barked, walking up aggressively. "What are you doing here? You don't belong in this part of town." Marcus calmly looked up from his book, unfazed. "I'm just enjoying the morning, officer. Is there a problem?" But Miller wasn't listening. His bias was louder than Marcus's calm words. "Stand up, turn around, and put your hands where I can see them," he shouted. Families nearby froze, watching the scene unfold. Some whispered nervously. Others shook their heads, recognizing the unfairness. Marcus sighed deeply, knowing exactly what was happening. He stood up slowly and complied, not because he was guilty, but because he knew this officer wasn't interested in explanations. Without hesitation, Miller grabbed Marcus's arm and started handcuffing him. "You fit the description of someone we're looking for," Miller said, though he had no real evidence. Marcus, still calm, asked, "And what description is that, officer?" Miller smirked. "You'll find out soon enough. For now, you're under arrest." The crowd began recording the incident on their phones. The tension was thick. Mothers pulled their children closer. Joggers stopped mid-run, and everyone could feel the weight of injustice in the air. But Marcus wasn't afraid, because he knew something Officer Miller didn't. As Miller tightened the cuffs, Marcus spoke, in a measured tone. "Officer, before you take this further, maybe you should check my identification." Miller scoffed, his arrogance growing. "Oh, I'll check it at the station. Right now, you're just another suspect." Marcus let out a slow breath, then gave a small smile. "All right, but I promise you, this is about to get very embarrassing." Just then, another police car pulled up. Out stepped Sergeant Davis, Miller's superior. Davis had been called after reports of an officer making a public arrest in the park without backup. He walked briskly toward them. "Miller, what's going on here?" Davis demanded. "Got this guy loitering, acting suspicious?" Miller said, his voice still full of misplaced confidence. "I'm bringing him in." Davis turned his attention to Marcus, who was standing calmly in handcuffs, not resisting, not panicking, just waiting. Marcus spoke respectfully but firmly. "Sergeant, if you don't mind, I'd like to show you my credentials." Davis raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." Marcus carefully reached into his pocket. With a smooth motion, he pulled out a leather badge holder, flipped it open, and held it up. The golden emblem gleamed under the sunlight. The words were clear. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent Marcus Johnson. The crowd gasped. Some people clapped, others shouted in disbelief. Miller's face drained of all color. Davis's eyes widened. "You're an FBI agent?" Marcus gave a calm nod. "Yes, Special Agent Johnson. I was here today on an unrelated assignment, but then I found myself being arrested for reading a book, apparently." The park buzzed with whispers. Phones zoomed in on the badge. Miller's confidence collapsed. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Davis's voice boomed with anger. "Miller, take those cuffs off, now!" With trembling hands, Miller fumbled with the keys, finally unlocking the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists lightly, but never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone carried authority. "Miller," Davis said, furious, "do you realize what you've just done? You put a federal agent in handcuffs without any probable cause. You embarrassed this department. You humiliated yourself, Miller stammered, trying to defend himself. He looked suspicious. I thought... Marcus cut in sharply, but still controlled. No, Officer Miller, you didn't think. You judged. You saw my skin color and decided I was guilty. That's not protecting the community. That's profiling. And today, it backfired. The crowd erupted in murmurs and applause. People shook their heads, pointing at Miller, some calling out, "Shame!" Sergeant Davis turned to Marcus, his tone respectful. Agent Johnson, I deeply apologize for this officer's behavior. This department does not condone discrimination. Rest assured, this will be handled. Marcus looked around at the gathering crowd. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. This isn't just about me. I wear a badge that protects me. But what about the people who don't? What about the men and women judged unfairly every single day? This has to stop, because one mistake like this could cost an innocent person their life. The park went silent for a moment, his words cutting deeper than anything else. Then, slowly, people began to applaud. The clapping grew louder, echoing through the park. Miller stood frozen, humiliated. His arrogance had turned to shame. His career, his pride, his image. It was all crumbling in front of an audience. Sergeant Davis, without hesitation, ordered, "Miller, step aside. You're relieved of duty until further notice." Marcus slipped his badge back into his pocket, picked up his coffee and book from the bench, and with calm dignity, walked away. He didn't need to argue, didn't need to shout. His actions, his composure and his truth had already spoken louder than anything else. And Miller? He stood there, watching Marcus disappear into the distance, realizing he had gambled with prejudice and lost everything. As Miller walked Marcus toward his squad car, Marcus spoke in a measured tone, his voice calm but carrying weight. "Officer, before you take this further, maybe you should check my identification." Miller laughed mockingly, arrogance dripping from his words. "Oh, I'll check it at the station. Right now, you're just a suspect." Marcus sighed again, but this time with a knowing smile. "All right, but this is about to get very embarrassing for you." At that very moment, another police car screeched to a stop nearby. Out stepped Sergeant Davis, Miller's superior. He had been called after reports of an officer making a very public arrest in the park. Families, joggers, and passers-by had already gathered, recording everything on their phones. "What's going on here, Miller?" Davis demanded sharply, his tone leaving no room for excuses. "Got this guy loitering and acting suspicious," Miller said confidently, still convinced of his own authority. "I'm bringing him in." Davis turned his attention to Marcus, who stood calmly in handcuffs, showing no panic. His voice was steady as he spoke. "Sergeant, if you'll allow me, I'd like to show you my credentials." Davis gave a small nod. Marcus reached into his pocket carefully, withdrew a leather badge holder, and flipped it open. The golden emblem caught the sunlight, shining brightly for all to see. The letters were unmistakable. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent Marcus Johnson. The crowd gasped in unison. Phones zoomed in closer, recording every second. Miller's face went pale, his arrogance draining away in an instant. Davis's eyes widened in shock. "Miller, take those cuffs off, now!" he barked. Miller's voice trembled. Wait, he's an FBI agent?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, Special Agent Johnson. I was here observing a case. Until I became yours." "Say." Park erupted with murmurs and gasps. Some clapped, others shook their heads in disgust. Davis turned on Miller with fury. "You just handcuffed a federal agent without probable cause. Do you understand how serious this is?" Miller tried to defend himself, stammering, "He looked suspicious, I thought." Marcus cut him off, his voice sharp yet calm. "No, officer." "Miller, you didn't think. You judged. You saw my skin color and assumed guilt. That's not policing. That's prejudice. By now, Miller was shaking with embarrassment. The once confident officer, who only minutes ago had strutted around with authority, was reduced to stuttering in front of a park full of people. His reputation, his pride, and his image were crumbling before everyone's eyes. Sergeant Davis, standing firm, addressed Marcus with the respect he deserved. "Agent Johnson, I sincerely apologize for this officer's behavior. This department does not stand for this kind of conduct." Marcus looked at Davis, then slowly turned his gaze to the crowd. Parents with children, joggers, and elderly couples all stared back at him, waiting for his words. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear, his voice calm but commanding. "This isn't just about me," Marcus began. "I can handle myself. I've got the law behind me. But what about those who don't have a badge to protect them? What about the countless men and women who are judged unfairly every single day just because of how they look? That's the real problem." The words struck the crowd like thunder. A woman near the front called out, "That's right." Others nodded in agreement, some clapping, others wiping away tears. The applause grew louder as more people felt the weight of his message. This wasn't just a scene in the park anymore. It had become a lesson everyone would remember. Meanwhile, Miller stood frozen, silent, with shame written all over his face. His arrogance had melted away, replaced by fear and humiliation. The police officer who had once barked orders now struggled to even hold his head up. Sergeant Davis turned to him sharply. "Miller, step aside. We'll be discussing your future with this department. For now, you're relieved of duty." His voice was cold, final, and left no room for argument. The park erupted with applause. It wasn't just for Marcus being set free. It was for justice, for truth, and for the powerful reminder that authority without accountability is dangerous. Marcus, still calm and composed, walked back to the bench where he had been sitting earlier. He picked up his coffee and his book, then turned one last time to face Miller. "Remember this, Officer Miller," Marcus said firmly. "The badge you wear is supposed to stand for protection, not prejudice. Every decision you make in uniform has consequences. Today you learned that lesson the hard way." Miller looked down at the ground, too ashamed to meet his eyes. His career, his pride, his power, it all seemed to be slipping away. And Marcus? He slipped his FBI badge back into his pocket, took a slow sip of his coffee, and walked away, with dignity, as though nothing had happened. The crowd parted to make way for him, some reaching out to shake his hand, others whispering words of thanks. They didn't just see an FBI agent. They saw a man who had turned injustice into a powerful lesson for everyone watching. And Miller? He remained standing in the park, humiliated and broken, realizing that his own prejudice hadn't just cost him his pride, it might very well cost him his career. As Marcus disappeared into the distance, the applause still echoed through the park, a reminder that sometimes the greatest justice comes not from punishment, but from truth being revealed in front of everyone. And that's the story of how a racist cop arrested the wrong man, only to discover he was an FBI agent. If you believe in standing up against injustice, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one.